What a huge pleasure it is here on the Road to Rock as we kick off 2024 in style. None other than famed songwriter, producer, all-around good guy, Desmond Child. He is in here. And now we also, Desmond, have to add author to that list of accolades as your book, Livin On a Prayer, Big Songs, Big Life, is out now. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah.
Well,
Everything's turning up roses for me.
that's great.
For me and for you.
Only a week into 2024, and that's it. So for me, I got to be honest, I'm a big sports fan here in Kansas City. We're in the playoffs, but we're not sure where things are going. I know the Titans, where you live, Nashville, got a big win yesterday. Do you like sports at all? Do you follow sports?
I actually don't follow sports because I could never do them. I didn't have a dad that would throw a ball at me or anything. So I just decided to become the biggest rock star of all time. That didn't work out. So I decided to be one of the biggest songwriters of all time. It's kind of like a step down, but
No, it's not. I still consider you one of the biggest rock stars of all time because, and I don't know if you ever hear this or people when they meet you or they say like, I didn't know it for many years, but I'm a huge fan of yours and I just didn't know it for a long time. Do you ever get that?
Well, I'm the man behind the curtain, I mean, people, at the front of the ship, there's always like the masthead, right? That's
Right.
the artist. And then there's a guy in the boiler room, kind of like shoveling coal into the furnace. That would be me.
So you're like a cross between Freddy Krueger and the guys from Titanic that were under the ship throwing stuff and like, yeah, that works.
That would be me. That would be me.
Well, Desmond, the book, it's just getting amazing reviews. It's called Livin On a Prayer, Big Songs, Big Life. This book is so important and it crosses so many boundaries and it does so many things. But it's funny because like I was reading through the Amazon reviews and there are just hundreds of 5-star reviews. Best book of the year. I can't put it down. All the great things you want to hear. And it's funny, the ones that don't give it 5 stars, they're always people that are hurt that you didn't talk about their favorite artist for 7 or 8 chapters. That's the one knock on the book. You didn't talk about, Kiss for the whole time. So can't please them all, right?
Well, I was told I could only, have 400 pages maximum on the book. Then Barbara Streisand's book comes out. It's like 1,000 pages. And her book is like, twice as thick as mine. It's like a Bible, So, I mean, I guess there is a difference between Barbara Streisand and me.
I guess. I'm kind of a bigger Desmond Child fan, to be honest, but Babs, come on. And that's just it about you. It's like I didn't know what I liked. You're sort of the conduit. You talked about that. I feel like you are sort of the conduit between like what I thought music was and then what my musical prowess became later in life and what I understood popular music was. And I think that became apparent for me when I saw Ricky Martin live, and I was not a fan. I'm like, oh, I'm a rocker. I hate, boy bands, forget it. NSYNC, those are around that time. And Ricky Martin came out and the way that people reacted to those songs. And it's like, I became a fan as he was on stage in front of me. And I was like, oh, Desmond Child wrote those songs. So, I mean, do you get that a lot that people sort of like place you with certain people? And then when they hear that you work with other artists, like, oh, wow, I guess I do like all that stuff.
Well, I mean, this is typical, it's like I had hits in the 80s. So then everyone thought of me as just rock. And then I went to Miami, rediscovered my Latin roots and met Ricky Martin. Then nobody thought of me as anything but Latin, And then I went and worked with Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood and Clay Aiken on American Idol. And everybody says, oh, he's a pop writer. They forgot about the rock and they forgot about the Latin. It's like, to me, style is secondary. What's the primary focus when I'm working with an artist is the message. What is the story here? And when people are telling a story that connects with them, like in a truthful way, it's going to hit people in the gut. And that's what, that's why I think my songs have a certain special quality to them, because they're storytelling, they're uplifting, most of them, and they, really help you to visualize uh, a world of the artist that is singing them.
Well, as someone that is a huge fan of music but doesn't know a ton about the inner workings, you've worked with some of my favorite artists from Kiss to Alice Cooper to Aerosmith. When you write with them, when you are producing them, when you sit in a room and they bring you on, or the conversation happens, do you feel like that you have to adapt more to them, or do they have to adapt to you? Would you say
Well,
more so?
I think it starts out with me adapting to them. By the end of it, they're adapting to me.
Hmm, that's beautiful.
And they think it's all their idea.
And I know.
That's the secret of my success.
Yeah, and I'd like to welcome our second guest here. Gene Simmons is joining us here to talk about "I Was Made for Loving You." I did hear your interview with Chris Jericho on the Talk Is Jericho podcast, talking about how you wrote "I Was Made for Loving You" with Kiss. This is 1979. Disco's huge, and I think there's a funny line in the movie Detroit Rock City where the burnout rocker says, "Man, if it's one thing I know, Kiss will never write a BS disco song," and that. The joke being, of course, they did, and the song's great. Oh, so much so, Desmond, that they played it on their farewell tour for the last 3 years as the second to last song of the night. But you had the funny moment where Gene and they were kind of running it down after they'd released it. And now it's like, oh, we're back to embracing that song now here as they said farewell now.
I was so proud. I was there at their final show at Madison Square
Oh,
Garden, December 2nd, a historic night. And they even had like the secondary stage set up with interviews, and I went up and I talked a little bit, and then I went and got in my seat, and I, like braced myself for the final show, and it was so moving. It just like it broke my heart, just seeing Paul on the stage, just looking up at me. Well, me, me, and 18,000 other me's up there. Like with this humble, like open, very vulnerable look, mask and all. I mean, it was just so striking. And I was so proud, and it was so wonderful. One thing I did notice is that to sing that song, Paul had to fly all the way to the remote stage to sing it, because Gene didn't want to be even on the same stage where it was sung.
that's the secret behind that. I get it. I'm glad you were there. I saw the last couple dates in St. Louis a few weeks before, and it was a magical. Kiss is my favorite band of all time. And one thing that I wish they would have done is done more like of an unmasked, like 80s era Kiss tour before they hung it up, because that is my favorite era. Crazy Nights. And my favorite 80s Kiss song, you know it well, my friend, is "You Make Me Rock Hard." That's my favorite Kiss 80s song, and it's not close. You wrote that song.
Yeah, we co-wrote it with Diane Warren, me and Paul and Diane Warren. And the way it started out, I got together for coffee with Diane in New York City, and we were just sitting in a little cafe, and we're getting ready to go and meet Paul for our first, session, the three of us together. And we were like joking. I said, well, why don't we come up with like a gag title, to make him laugh, And so I think it was Diane said, oh, yeah, "You Make Me Rock Hard." You get it? And it's like, oh, that would be so hysterical to, like, with a straight face, like, suggest that. He loved it. And so we wrote the song, and Diane's looking at me like, "You've got to be kidding. He loved that?" It was supposed to be a joke.
Well, it's funny because the song itself is it's like got more of a serious tone. It's like very melodic, and like it doesn't have like a double entendre feel to it, like say "All Night" or something like that. It's presented very straightforward,
I know. It's so crazy.
It's become my favorite in parentheses song. You got the title and then an parenthetical, like, "I've had enough." in parentheses, Into the Fire. Kiss was good at
Right.
doing that. But that era, I mean, was that a tough era for Gene in general? Because people always talk about like, oh, Gene, it was hard to find Gene a look that made sense. And like he was off kind of doing movies. That was sort of Paul's time to shine, right? I mean, in the 80s.
Well, I guess so. I mean, I don't see it that way. I mean, they really are partners and they're very careful with
Mm,
their brand. And I mean, there are very strict rules, to write stadium anthems the Kiss way, and which is what Paul taught me. He's my most important mentor.
mm,
And he's the one that introduced me to Bon Jovi. And then, the rest, of my career tumbled out of that introduction. And so, I think that, they were trying to do a lot of things because, they wanted to keep up, with the times. And so they felt strongly that they needed to unmask and show that they were really musicians. And then, we could write songs like Reason to Live or Who Wants to Be Lonely, which had like a more profound emotional content. And in the end, the fans weren't having it. They would say, "No, we want the old Kiss," with the fantasy of the masks and all of that. And I'm really glad that they went back to that because that's just archetypal. It's just so much fun too. And like when I worked with Alice Cooper, he always explained like he's not Alice Cooper, he's Vincent Fournier. He's the son of a preacher man. And he had a band called Alice Cooper, and everybody started calling him Alice Cooper.
mhm.
So then it just stuck. But when writing for Alice Cooper, it makes it easy because Alice Cooper is a creation, a character. And he explained, because he's a very moral person, that if Alice Cooper you know cuts the head off of a doll, then guess who's going to have his head cut off by the end of the show? In the guillotine. See,
Alice.
he always gets punished for being a bad boy. And so that's the moral dilemma of the Alice Cooper kind of music. So, there are other characters that I've worked with, like Meatloaf and, you know, even Cher. She talks about Cher in the third person. Like, I don't think Cher would sing that, like Cher is Cher. And, she's, Sherilyn. That's who she is inside, you know?
Well, interestingly, by the time that you kind of started working with Alice Cooper, you talked about Kiss adapting to the times. Alice Cooper's been a chameleon his whole career. I love the Alice Cooper band stuff from the early 70s, Schools Out and Killers and all that. And then we get into the 80s, which again, I think we found my niche here, Desmond. I love the 80s Kiss stuff. I love 80s Alice Cooper. And then Trash, of course, comes out, right at the end of that, 1990. You know, Alice had already been delving in that realm with a couple previous albums to Trash. But like when you got there and you did that album with him, you talk about just a clean, polished, big choruses. He had the band at the time to pull it off. I think Pete Friesen was in the band on guitars. Just talk about that experience making Trash, because to this day, a top 5 Alice album for me for sure.
Well, Trash, the album, this is what I was told, I may not be correct on these numbers. The album he had done previously on another label only sold 15,000 records. And so I was brought into this situation, and I love Alice Cooper. He's one of the like people that I went to see when I was 18, in concert at the Miami High Life Fronton, 1972, April 23rd, I
Wow.
think it was. And I went in makeup, with the spider eyes and all this. And I have the pictures to prove it. They're all in my book. And, I didn't even show those pictures to Alice till like a couple of years ago, so I was like, always a fan, but I didn't really let him know how much a fan I was because, a producer has to kind of maintain a kind of distance,
Mhm.
objective distance. You can't be a fan and produce a record, you know,
Interesting.
you
Yeah.
know, like in Mommy Dearest, when the, Christina, she says, you wouldn't treat me like, I mean, a perfect stranger wouldn't even treat me the way you treat me. And Christina says, that's because I'm not your fan, you know, and then she gets like,
So that was you. You were the, even though you were a fan. I mean, and that is the incredible part because of this incredible lineage and this wonderful legacy that you've impacted, you know, music with. And, you know, one thing that took me years to realize, you know, kind of tying in the Alice Cooper, the trash stuff, is House of Fire. Bon Jovi also recorded that as a demo that did not wind up on New Jersey. Did you write that for Bon Jovi or did you write it for Alice?
No, 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 no. It was co-written with Joan Jett. And we started the song and she just wasn't taking to it. She just said, it's not me. It's too hard rock. I don't know. It just seems too kind of woo, House of Fire, you know, kind of like that. And so then I brought it to Alice and I had pitched it to Bon Jovi and they weren't like jumping on it. And so then I brought it to Alice Cooper and I finished it with Alice. And so the real original writers were me and Joan Jett and then Alice Cooper. And then unbeknownst to me, John had run with it and cut it.
Oh.
But I don't think it was on one of the records. It was like on their like compilation much later or something like that. You know, so House of Fire was written with Joan Jett, finished with Alice Cooper, and Joan actually performed on the song in Trash. And then it's like, you know, when I first played I Hate Myself for Loving You for John, you know, because I was writing back and forth with different people. I said, well, listen to this great song I produced with Joan Jett. And I played it and he looked at me like with like, you know, Godfather eyes. And he said, fuck you. And he just walked away. I think that meant he liked it. You know,
do you get that a lot? Do you get a lot of FUs for the way these songs wind up in different hands?
Only from him. Only from him.
He's a New Jersey guy. You know, hey, that's like that's their way of saying I love you. I think that's the East Coast. I love you.
Yeah, that is. It absolutely is.
Well, Desmond, as you're going into doing this project, why did you feel that now was kind of the time to do this? And when you are putting together this project, are you somebody that goes off of memory? Are you just like someone that remembers everything? Or when you get into this and you're just like, oh my God, I don't remember years. I don't remember dates. I think you do because you kind of teased it there. You remember that Alice Cooper concert. So do you do a lot of this off memory? How was it when you were first putting this project together for you?
Well, first of all, it's not now. I started the book 7 years ago.
Right.
With David Ritz. And we wrote all over the world, Greece, New York, Nashville, Miami, I mean, LA. I mean, we were writing in all these different locations. And, you know, I would talk and then, you know, he would record what I said and then have it transcribed. And then he would put it into the story. And then, you know, a lot of the times he would be like, you know, kind of tying things together. And I said, no, that's not how it worked. It worked like this. And then when I thought about it further, I clarified things, you know, but, you know, I had hoped that once I got it all out of my system, I wouldn't have to remember it all again, but it's the opposite. I've just stirred everything up.
Yeah. So 7 years kind of in the making.
Yeah. And it's very emotional. And I decided, you know, I'm not going to make one of those books. It's like, and then I did this, and then I did that. And then when I got this award and that, you know, I mean, when I read those autobiographies, I just want to kill myself. Right. So I just decided to make it more of an emotional journey as I told the story, you know, the biographical stories that went around them.
Incredible. And I mean, like I said, the reviews are outstanding. You can get it on the website here, desmondchild.com, or you can go to Amazon. It's available anywhere. I love that cover, by the way. How old were you when that picture was taken? You had to be like 30 there.
No, I was 40.
Oh, well, see, and now you look 55. So it all makes sense.
I just turned 70.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So your journey is such a part of this from you were born in Cuba, correct?
No, I was born in
Oh,
Gainesville, Florida. And, my mother had married an American geologist, and he had taken her to live in the jungles of Venezuela. And she
wow.
became, I mean, she had only known him 6 weeks before she got married. She just wanted out of Havana. She was Cuban. She just wanted out of there. This is 1951, right? And so by 1953, she had an affair with a Hungarian entrepreneur that was making oil rigs in the middle of the jungles. And he was very handsome, looked like a movie star himself. And that's how I was conceived. But when her husband got wind of that she was pregnant and all that, he suspected something, and he left his job and moved her, and with me still not born yet, to Gainesville, Florida, to a little farm in a little outskirt town, Hawthorne, Florida, where we had a dairy ranch called Cuernavaca. And, I didn't find out who my real father was till I was 18. When I turned 18,
Wow.
that's when I found out. And so, the journey of, and I mean, it's not even like she stayed with that husband. She had
Yeah.
like three other ones. And many men coming in and out of our lives. And so, I sort of got rescued in a way by my biological father, because he had just stayed on the side watching, me grow up. And then when I found out, then I really bonded with him. Then everything made sense to me, why I was a certain way, why I looked a certain way, all of that. And it was very profound, you know. And my biological father and I became very, very close because I was his first child. See, then he had another family and all this kind of stuff. And I love my half brothers and sisters and sister, um, but um, you know,
Mm.
being kind of like not told the truth
Yeah.
was very difficult for me. And so I had a very, troubled relationship with my mother, which I talk about in the book.
Right. Do you remember a moment or, either at a concert or listening to a record where kind of the dots started to connect for you, where you go like, "I know what I like. I know I have this musical, these capabilities," and the dots just kinda connected and you go, "This is the kind of music that I want to put out into the world?"
For me, it was hearing the music of Laura Nyro, Nyro. One of my sons is named after her, and it was like hearing her music when I was 15, just like put it, brought it all together for me. I said, I'm feeling something, and this is making me feel like a person. I went from being just a kid to a person,
Mhm.
and feeling things that I had never felt before. And so I was going through puberty also, and so it was like kind of discovering this androgynous part of me, that I wasn't like everybody else. In the end, maybe I was, you could call bi, because that's what rock stars are supposed to be. But in the end, I realized I was more gay than I was bi. And
Mm.
so that perspective of coming into the world from that perspective, I think helped me a lot creatively, because I was able to fit in a way into the cultures of different bands as not a threat. Other guys would go co-write and they'd run away with their wives. That wasn't going to happen. The most I do is rearrange their furniture,
So
rehang paintings or something, like. So I feel like um, growing up different. I was Latino, I was gay, I was poor. I had a lot of things to overcome. And there was a lot of glass ceilings that I had to break through to be a success.
and that's what this whole journey is about, and to see that success and to see all the culmination of all that is really gratifying as someone that's as big a music fan as me, that you've worked with so many of these artists, one of which is Ratt. Now you catch up with Ratt on the Detonator album, sort of at the very end of what we knew as Ratt. And people always say, and this bothers me,
Of what we knew as rock.
as,
Let's
as
just
well,
call it that.
that's a
Call
good
it
point.
that.
That's a good point, because we're very close to 91, 92 and Nirvana and grunge. But in 90, people always say Ratt wasn't successful because they didn't have the big ballad. I beg to differ, Desmond Child, because Giving Yourself Away is one of the best ballads of that era, and it's kind of unheralded. I think a tremendous song, but just kind of talk about your experience with that song and writing with Ratt on Detonator.
Well, I was invited to, not only write but produce them. But it was at the time that I was kind of recording and producing my own solo album, Discipline, on Elektra Records. And so I was getting ready to go on a publicity tour. The album was done. And, I asked my engineer, who was now kind of out of work because I wasn't going to be making records. And so I said, well, why doesn't Sir Arthur Payson produce the record? I'll be more like an executive producer. And then I proceeded to co-write a bunch of songs with them. It wasn't all the songs, but most of the songs. And it was a very troubled time for them because one of the members of their band, Robin, was having a lot of trouble. His name was King. Also, he's the sweetest, looked like a Viking with blonde hair, like huge guy. He ended up passing away from, overdose or whatever. And so I was kind of helping them to kind of stay together in a way, like while we were writing, pulling them together, because when things like that happen, usually the bands like fall apart and they grow apart. So, I came up with the title Detonator. The Loving You's a Dirty Job, and I'm the man to do it. Like, I came up with that. Giving Yourself Away, yes. But by that point, the rock era was kaput.
Right.
It was just over. And Nirvana came in with Smells Like Teen Spirit and just wiped the whole genre and the whole era off the map. And, everything was opposite. In the 80s, men were like chest up. And in the previous era of the 1980s, it was, remember, the me generation. It was Reaganomics and the working class, all working class heroes like Bon Jovi, chests up, hairy chests up, and triumphant, and, real showmanship. Everything was broad like that. And people loved it. But then came this like turn, and the pendulum swung the other way, and the new guys came in, and they weren't virtuoso musicians. That's why they looked down, because they could barely play the 4 chords they knew. And they looked down, their chests were sunken in, they wore baggy clothes instead of tight clothes. You never saw like a package on one of them. You know what I'm saying? No tight jeans package.
They didn't have packages.
It
was a rough era for me, Desmond. It was a rough era. You know what I like? You've learned this over the last 25 minutes, and that was a rough time for me. And I was like in middle school and like supposed to be liking it, but I was always into the other bands, the bands that made me, that were fun, that made me feel things, right?
So it turned the other way, which was the birth of like all of these like modern, what is like has now turned into active rock, or alternative rock. And but it's funny, as those songs kind of come and go, none of it's like that memorable, and they stick. But yet my airplay goes up with all the songs that I wrote, during that period of time. So it shows that human nature is such that in the end, people, want to be happy. They don't want to just be killing themselves. And look at how many of those lead singers killed themselves.
That's a
So that music
yeah.
led people into dark places of their minds.
I have brought
Not
that
that
up
I don't
before
like
too.
the sonics. I love the angular kind of Nordic kind of sounds of it. I really do. And some of the lyrics are cool, and they're very, artistic and everything. But I never wrote for the critics. I was just trying to, see if I could become a rock star myself. And then when that didn't work out, I just wanted to be rich. So, and also, that was my taste. My
Yeah,
taste was more pop because I came out of, New York City, Brill Building, Broadway, things up and big and, all that. That's what I loved. And so, not this kind of dark, morose thing.
that's a excellent point, and I've brought that up too before about and I give a lot of respect to bands and artists, from the '90s, the Nirvanas and the Stone Temple Pilots, and on and on, Soundgarden, and it's like, man, but you do look at it, it's like those singers have died. It's and it and the Kiss is playing their last show a couple weeks ago in their 70s because
Exactly. They lived with all their fire and brimstone. They lived, and the other guys that were cooler than thou died.
it's true. We'd be remiss. Okay, Desmond, the book, of course, is called Living on a Prayer. In doing research for this interview last night, I'm watching the Bills and Dolphins game on TV, and "Living on a Prayer" is blaring in Hard Rock Stadium in Miami because it is a part of the American lexicon. Like maybe very few songs that came before it or after. Do you feel it's the "Don't Stop Believing" of the '80s or of the next generation? Is this your proudest moment as a songwriter, or is it just another thing you did and it just happened to be so massive?
I think it is pretty much the biggest song that I've ever collaborated on. I love it so much because people have written us so many letters saying how that song got them through a hard time. I mean, there was even a letter that I got from a guy saying, that we saved his life with that song because he was getting ready to kill himself. So he was kind of a little bit tipsy, went to the bridge, just jumped out of the car, left the car running, windows open, radio full blast. And he was leaning to kind of throw himself off. And "Living on a Prayer" came on. That was his favorite song. So he said, "Oh, isn't that okay? Let this be the last song I ever hear." So he gets back in the car. By the time it got to the modulation at the end, he drove home. So Bon Jovi saves lives.
Bon Jovi was the guardian angel from "It's a Wonderful Life," literally in this case, from the
Yes,
bridge.
exactly.
Did that song hurt John in some ways? Because like on that "Slippery When Wet" tour, like he like blew his voice out, trying to sing that chorus, and like to this day he doesn't really sing that chorus. Dave Bryan does, right?
I don't know about that. I've heard him sing it plenty. He does curse me though with the modulation.
Right. I get it. Yeah, like
I mean, it was, they in the studio, like they pushed it like just to the maximum energy, maximum everything, because it's the epitome of the American dream. That song is the national anthem of the American dream. You know, uh, you know, it doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. We've got each other, and for love, we'll give it a shot. We're halfway there, living on a prayer. I mean that is the quintessential American, you know, dream, and it's the thing that everybody tries to get here for, to be a part of that, beautiful dream and that beautiful experiment that we call democracy. And both of my parents came from Soviet dominated countries, Cuba and Hungary. And I've lived with this whole thing about like a country that isn't free. So, I'm hoping that people remember, what what it means to be free and not forfeit it because, they think they're going to, have to pay 5% less taxes or whatever they think is worth it to give up democracy for, you know. I'm just,
Wow.
I lived it. I lived in the Cuban exile community. Our family suffered, from losing everything and living in a country where they couldn't be free. And so, I am a patriot. I love America. And so to me, Living on a Prayer is like the national anthem of the American dream.
I gotta be honest, I'm kind of tearing up a bit right now hearing you say that because it's a very unpopular opinion to have in 2024 in America, Desmond. I feel like in a lot of ways,
What?
what you just said. The idea that America is this wonderful bastion of freedom. We don't That's not a popular sentiment, I feel like.
No, because somebody doesn't want us to feel that way.
And why is that?
Because, I think that we're unduly influenced by other countries, that are sending all kinds of messages to our, to our kids and through TikTok and all that. And, it's very scary. I mean, think about it. How many countries are free?
It's not
Truly.
many.
And, many are kind of turning in the direction of authoritarian leaders. And there's no need to, and what comes with it is intolerance. So if you don't fit into the authoritarians' picture of what they call classic American is, that's,
Yeah.
classic American is white,
Mhm.
mother, father, children. That's the classic American in a world that was created on television and in movies that really didn't reflect what was really going on in our cities, and didn't incorporate the life
Sure.
of of people of other religions or races. And so now that our country's so big and has so many different kinds of people, I think that it's become very threatening. So now when somebody says, um, you know, our our blood is being poisoned, what does that mean?
Th Especially here in this country, there is no such thing. We have too much of a lineage for that.
And so, I just saw the most remarkable movie called Rustin, and it's about the making of the big uh, speech at the big speech that Martin Luther King gave at
Mhm.
the Lincoln Memorial. 250,000 people showed up for that, and they expected 100,000.
Huh.
250,000 people showed up for it. It was the biggest gathering ever in the history of anything, and that movie was so moving, and I really recommend it. It was directed by George C. Wolfe, who I had worked with on a musical, on my musical for some years. And you know, eh, there are many movies like that. They're really inspirational to me because I had written a song with Hanson called "Weird," and that's one of my favorite songs because it's a sitting on the side waiting for a sign, hoping that my luck will change, reaching for a hand that'll understand, someone who feels the same. When you live in a cookie cutter world, being different is a sin, so you don't stand out and you don't fit in. Weird. And to me, that was my story. I was an outsider, Latino, poor, gay. And the one of the greatest moments of my life, well, of course, is my husband and I having our own children. It's
Yep.
documented in a documentary that we made called Two, the
Yep.
story of Roman and Nero. And when we released the week we released the movie, in 2013, our children were, 10 years old, and they were the best men at our marriage because all of a sudden we had, gay marriage was legal, and
Yeah,
it was very hard fought,
sure.
and now there are 66. I heard 600 bills going through the legislatures of a lot of states trying to knock that out to disqualify the sanctity of our marriage. And our I think our children growing up didn't so much mind that we were same-sex parents. What they minded was being bastards with
Mm,
unmarried parents, and it got
that
fixed. And so,
thankfully.
I hope it's not temporarily,
Right.
with this, wave of, what, bring back, you know, the classic Americans, that doesn't include me.
To me it does, and I'm a patriot just like you, and you are, and what you've done and the music to me is the most all-encompassing American dream that there is, because music is what brings everybody together. Big songs like "Living on a Prayer" brought millions and millions of people together. That's the
Right.
American
But
dream. You are the American dream.
now hate brings people together.
I
And
hate that.
I hate, I hate that. So we're, people are what I call scapegoat, you know,
I'm gonna yeah.
because it's much easier to like say, "Hey guys, do you hate this?" And then over there, guys, these fine people over there, do you hate this? And somehow you bring all the haters together, and they feel good because now they belong instead of being outsiders. They're now insiders. They feel like they belong to something in hate. And
That
so,
mm,
we saw how that ended up in Europe in World War II, and that could happen here. And like my father had to flee Hungary, because it was not a free country.
sure.
And
Well,
so, and my mother's family, all of them, they ended up in Miami, because they couldn't live in a country that was not free. It's intolerable to live in a country that's not free. So,
yes.
I wrote a special song for Barbara Streisand called Lady Liberty. And people go on YouTube, you can watch
Yeah.
the lyric video of Lady Liberty, where we do a tribute to all the strong women, in history and of America.
Yes.
And you know, it's funny how, the Statue of Liberty always represented, it was a symbol of American freedom. And that was one of the first thing that my father saw when he came over on the boat from Hungary through a fog
Oh,
into, the Hudson Bay, and saw the Statue of Liberty and broke down into tears
oh.
that he finally had reached a land with freedom. And now she's no good because she's a woman. She's she's inviting immigrants to our country with open arms. Give us your tired and your poor. You know,
Oh,
I mean, it's like, so there was even a guy, a congressman that came up that wanted to go to the Statue of Liberty and rip off that beautiful poem that was written by a woman. That is the one that contains, give us your tired and your poor, and all of that, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these the homeless, I mean, the tempest tossed to me. So I included those lyrics in my song Lady Liberty, because to me, that's what we're about. I often fly across the United States. Hey, people, you can fly for hours and not see one city or
mhm.
town. there's plenty of room here, you know. And, if we got everybody working, we would be a powerhouse. How can China have 2.1 or 2 billion people and we're at like 350 million? China's got like beat us on that, and they're feeding everybody, and everybody's working, making the stuff we buy at Walmart.
Right. Yes.
So the fact that, we just need to get better organized to make, partake in the energy of these people that are coming with stars in their eyes, that want to work hard, and not call them vermin, and not call them, drug dealers and rapists. I don't know. I mean, any person that I've met, I have cousins that are Mexican. So I resemble that remark.
Of course.
And, I just don't understand it at all, because the immigrants that come here work hard, people from, all parts of the world, not just Latin America, but, from India and, from China, from everywhere. They come here to, because they get to dead ends, let's say, in their countries, and they can't move forward.
Sure.
So, my role as an artist and as a songwriter is, I see as to bring more humanity to humanity.
Noble.
Not shut ourselves off from our soulful part. Because when you go into hate world, your soul, you start to take the shine off your soul. So,
yeah.
when people think that they're getting closer to God, it's quite a delusion, isn't it?
Yes.
How could God be about hate?
No.
So, I hope that we went through some periods like that, like the Red Scare and the Lavender Scare in the 50s. Senator McCarthy and Roy Cohn and J. Edgar Hoover, all these people, they came after what they call communists. And if you had even turned up at a meeting to see what it was about, all of a sudden you lost your job. Sounds like now, right? You get culture. And then they came out after, try to uncover who was gay, because gay people were considered a threat to national security. Why? Because they could be extorted. Well, maybe. But the fact is that if you're out, you can't be extorted. So that's why the armed forces finally figured out that if they're gay members, which were many by the hundreds of thousands, were out, then an enemy couldn't extort them. And then all of a sudden,
how about it?
All of a sudden it was like it took a big false narrative off of the situation. So to live in truth, to be truthful, that's what God is, because God's in the now. And if you say what is happening, the truth of what is happening, then you're living, in the light of God, in my view.
Well, Desmond, I'll tell you, I can't thank you enough for so many of these candid remarks, and the book, Living on a Prayer, Big Songs, Big Life. It's available. It's tremendous. I want to make sure everybody knows the site. We've been scrolling it. DesmondChild.com, easy to find. Thank you so much for all the wonderful work that you've done, and for the joy you've brought to me, millions of others, and for some really candid remarks that I think people should really take notice of. And I really appreciate all of it, Desmond. I appreciate you, and thank you so much.
My motto is live and help live.
Let's do it. I'm in.
Live. Be yourselves. If you don't like something, something, it's like, if you don't like gay marriage, don't marry a gay person. Because that's what they did before. Ladies married gay men, and those gay men thought that they could hide inside those marriages. And it was very harmful to those ladies and to
Sure.
the children when the man finally couldn't deal with it, either killed himself or ran away.
Oh,
You
it's
know,
suppression.
living in fear, living. There's a great television series called Fellow Travelers with Matt Bomer. Oh my God. And one of the guys from Bridgerton. Oh my God. It's so good. And it totally explains, life in America in the 50s, how people had to live in fear, and in the 80s when AIDS came, and it goes back and forth in time.
Oh,
I totally recommend it. And, it's like live and help live,
yeah.
help live, help children, help poor people, help the handicapped, make sidewalks so they can roll on and off,
Yes.
even if it costs a
Simple.
little more. You know what I'm saying?
Seems so
Live,
simple. Yeah. And yet,
live, and help live and
yeah.
be happy and loving.
Well, we can all strive to that, Desmond. Again, thank you so much. All the best here in 2024. I know it will be. Thank you again, my friend. We'll catch up soon.
Okay. Bye.